Satanism is often mistaken for being the worship of Satan. However, this is not the case. Satanism follows the philosophy of humanism, which is an anti-religious way of thinking that focuses on the concept of humanity, which is of simply being human and nothing more. Anton LaVey is the chief architect of modern-day Satanism. LaVey, noted for his spells and strange rituals, founded an anti-Christian group called the Magic Circle. He then wrote the Satanic Bible with its famous 9 satanic principles and called his group the Church of Satan. In LaVey's opinion, Satan represents the value that man is just another animal. Satanic rituals has been seen as a moral panic. A moral panic is a collective stress reaction in response to a belief in stories about immediately threatening circumstances. It tends to be triggered by unusual, disturbing rumors about which factual information is lacking, incomplete, or disputed. In trying to find an explanation for these stories, people exchange ideas, try out assumptions, and speculate freely within the parameters of their own worldview. The rumors they collectively share may or may not be true. The term satanic ritual abuse, also referred to as SRA, was coined 15 years ago to describe what is believed to be the widespread sexual, physical, and psychological abuse of young children in satanic cult ceremonies. The term gave a name to disturbing reports that were cropping up across the country. Children, as well as adults who were recovering memories of childhood in the therapy, were claiming that they had been abused during the course of rituals that also include such horrific practices such as torture, brainwashing, cannibalism, and human sacrifices conducted by Satanist cultists, who were family members, daycare providers, friends, neighbors, and even prominent members of the community. It is estimated that 185 people were criminally charged in cases accusing satanic ritual abuse between 1983 and 1995 in the United States. 113 of them were convicted, and over 50 of those people remain in prison today. Similar cases were discovered in Canada, England, Scotland, Holland, and New Zealand, generating as much controversy as in America. The much-needed empirical study by Godman in 1994, funded by the National Centre on Child Abuse and Neglect, further contributed to this. The researchers surveyed 6,910 clinical psychologists, social workers, and 4,655 agencies, including departments of social services. Respondents reported 12,264 cases of alleged satanic ritual abuse involving children and adults. Although the vast majority of respondents believed that each case they reported to the researchers was a real case of satanic ritual abuse, they could offer very little, if any, evidence corroborating their belief. What evidence they could offer, such as visible scars on the bodies of their clients, could be accounted for with reasonable alternative explanations, such as self-injury. The researchers also found that there was little agreement between the allegations made by children and the recovered memories of adults. The former tend to talk about such archetypically frightening acts such as being confined in the dark with spiders and snakes, while the later disclosed the kind of horrific acts of cannibalism, blood drinking, and human sacrifice which have come to typify the notion of satanic ritual abuse. Much of the public believed that a widespread underground secret network of satanic cults were kidnapping, sexually and physically abusing, and even murdering and eating infants and children. Followers of many became faith groups who were targeted by the SRA movement and labeled as child abuse perpetrators. This created a panic which subsequently led to social services taking children away from their parents. In 1980, the first SRA survivor book, called Michelle Remembers, was published in North America. It described horrendous sexual and physical abuse allegedly suffered by the co-author Michelle Smith. She labeled perpetrators as Satanists who believed that the pain inflicted upon the victims increased their black magical powers. The group also engaged in human sacrifice and cannibalism. However, rituals described by the co-author Dr. Lorenz Padza appeared to be taken from his early studies of African native religions rather than real satanic practices. Many police officers joined the SRA movement during the early 1980s. They were concerned the Satanists were literally getting away with murder. They soon became aware that no hard evidence had ever been found, which implied that these satanic cults were a mere conspiracy. There were no bodies, no bones, no bloodstains, nothing. The police reasoned that if survivors' testimonies were true, then certain hard evidence would have been readily detectable. It wasn't. The most famous examples are the non-existent tunnels under the McMartin Preschool Center in California. Many experts believe that these are false memories. It is argued that the adults' memories were implanted by therapists through a variety of suggestive therapeutic techniques. It's agreed that the survivors aren't lying, they are just telling the truth how they remember it to be. Jean Lafontaine found no evidence to substantiate the claims of satanic abuse in the 84 allegations she investigated. Hundreds of adults were convicted and jailed for crimes which they did not commit. The majority of them now have been released. By the year 2002, the SRA lives on, mainly in court cases, in an inverted form. Victims of experimental suggestive counselling techniques started suing a therapist for having induced false memories of SRA. Multi-million-dollar settlements have been reached in some cases. The concept of multiple personality disorder has been associated with from recovered memory therapy and SRA. It asserts that some people suffer from a number of separate personalities. Most therapists now believe that MPD does not appear in nature and has to be artificially generated by the interaction of a therapist and patient. Normally, if the patient is separated from a MPD therapist and support groups, the alters fade and eventually disappear. There remain many individuals and groups who still attempt to raise public awareness of SRA through seminars, web pages, articles, books, etc. They often teach that many being gentle religious groups are abusing, mutilating, programming, and killing children and adults. On the other side of the debate is pseudo-satanic killing. Pseudo-satanic killing is when a murderer claims to be a Satanist in order to justify their killings. They often claim that the devil made them do it, so the perpetrator admits guilt but says that he is not in control. Usually it is shown that these people tend to have a mental illness. Ricky Casso claimed that Satan spoke to him through a black crow and told him that he must kill, so he did, by luring his friend Gary Loris into the woods and held a knife to his throat and ordered him to say, "I love you, Satan." After Loris said this, Casso killed him and then gouged his eyes out. However, it should also be noted that Casso struggled with drug abuse and mental illness. Many blame these pseudo-satanic killings on such things as fantasy books and games including Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling, which many religious groups consider satanic due to the description of witchcraft and wizardry. It can be said that witchcraft is actually based on religious understandings revolving around nature, which renders the above argument unsound. Also, games like Dungeons & Dragons have been alleged to affect gamers' morals understanding in a way that is not acceptable in modern society, as the gamer is unable to differentiate between fantasy and reality. These understandings get carried over to the real world and can result in violent behavior. Rock music has consistently caused panic, especially heavy metal songs by bands such as Black Sabbath have been associated with satanic cults for their supposedly subliminal and backwards messages. Nu metal uses lyrics based on violence and violent crimes, with artists such as Marilyn Manson taking the lead in the new craze with morbid lyrics based around his supposed life. This caused panic as it started a teenage youth culture and encouraged different behaviour to what was normally acceptable. Also, even though the music was not harmful in itself, the followers of the new culture began to fight amongst themselves and started habits such as smoking. The new ways in which teenagers were beginning to live, moving away from family activities to their peer groups, caused panic in the parents of these children. The craze seemed like a cult that their children relentlessly followed, as they were seen as easy targets. Overall, satanic ritual abuse was an exaggerated fear perpetrated by the media, using heavy metal and fantasy games which influenced behaviour as scapegoats. It was blown out of proportion and thus became an issue of public concern. Satanic behaviour was seen as a threat to moral order and stability of society. Satanists were seen as folk devils and intrinsically evil, thus creating a self-fulfilling prophecy resulting in pseudo-satanic killings. However, it is important to note that real Satanists do not believe in the existence of God, the afterlife, the devil. It is an autodeist, which means that they worship themselves. It's about real life and real emotions, and in my opinion,
please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. Stole many a man.